Yorkshire, October 1818. The dressing room at Hargrave Manor smelled of desperation, a heavy mix of wilted orange blossoms, cold sweat, and the sharp smoke of candles that had been put out too quickly. Clarissa Hargrave stood stiff before the tall mirror, while her mother pulled the ivory silk bodice tighter and tighter, stealing the breath from her lungs. "Stand still," Lady Hargrave whispered sharply, as her fingers worked fast along the line of pearl buttons. "We have less than an hour before the carriage arrives. You will be perfect. Do you understand me?" But this was not Clarissa's gown. The rich silk trimmed in lace and seed pearls had been made for her older sister, Venetia. Beautiful Venetia. Charming Venetia. The daughter who was meant to marry Maximilian Crowe, Duke of Bellingham, and the same Venetia who had vanished 12 hours earlier. She had run away in the night with a poor cavalry captain, leaving behind a tear-stained letter and the ruin of her family's last hope. The letter had arrived at dawn. Clarissa had watched her mother's face change from confusion to horror, and then to something colder, something calculating. Venetia had written that she could not marry the Duke. She did not love him. She had followed her heart. By the time they read the letter, she was already on her way to Scotland to be married. Clarissa's father had sunk into his chair like a broken man. "We are destroyed," he had said quietly. The Duke had already advanced part of Venetia's dowry, money her father had used to pay his debts. If the marriage failed, that money would be demanded back. And they did not have it. Prison waited for her father. Ruin waited for them all. That was when her mother had looked at Clarissa. No, Clarissa had whispered the moment she understood. "You will wear your sister's gown," Lady Hargrave had said, in a voice that allowed no refusal. "You will stand beside the Duke. You will speak the vows, and you will save this family." "It is fraud," Clarissa had cried. "It is wrong. It is necessary," her father had answered. The Duke had never met Venetia in person. All negotiations had been handled through letters and lawyers. He would not know the difference, not beneath a heavy bridal veil. "We need only complete the ceremony," her mother had insisted. "After that, it will be too late to undo it." "Unless he discovers the truth," Clarissa had whispered. Her mother had not answered. Now, hours later, but Clarissa barely recognized the woman staring back at her in the mirror. The gown fit well enough. She and Venetia were close in height, though Clarissa was slimmer. Her dark chestnut hair had been arranged carefully and decorated with white roses. But it was the veil that would make the lie possible. 3 layers of thick lace hid her features almost completely. The Duke of Bellingham was a widower. His wife had died in childbirth 2 years before. He was marrying again for duty, for an heir. "He will not look too closely," her mother had said. "Men like him marry for bloodlines, not for romance." And after the ceremony, Clarissa had asked, "When he removes the veil and sees that I am not Venetia?" By then, her mother had replied, "The marriage will be sealed." Clarissa had felt something inside her break. Still, she had agreed. And for Emma, her younger sister. For James, her brother at university. For her father, who would otherwise rot in debtor's prison. "I will do it," she had said. Now the carriage rolled across the cold Yorkshire moors toward Ravenstone Hall. The estate rose from the land like something carved from stone and sorrow. Gray walls, narrow windows, a place built to endure storms and silence. Clarissa felt small as she stepped from the carriage. Small and terribly alone. The wedding was quiet. Few guests. Few witnesses. The chapel doors opened, and Clarissa walked down the aisle on her father's trembling arm. At the altar stood Maximilian Crowe. Even from a distance he looked severe. Tall and broad, dressed in black. His hair was silver gray, though he was only 34. When he turned, his eyes met hers through the veil, and they were the color of a winter sky before snow. There was no warmth there, no joy, only duty. Clarissa reached him and placed her hand in his. His grip tightened slightly. Did he notice her hands were smaller than Venetia's? Did he feel the difference? He said nothing. The vows were spoken. The register signed. When asked her name, Clarissa felt her heart stop. "Venetia Hargrave," she said. She signed it in shaking ink. "Venetia Hargrave." The priest smiled. "You may kiss your bride." The Duke lifted the edge of her veil, just enough to press a brief kiss to her lips. Cool, distant, without affection. "Duchess," he said quietly. The word felt like a lie. The wedding breakfast passed in a blur. Clarissa kept her veil in place. Her parents avoided her gaze. As evening fell, her family departed. But Clarissa stood in the great hall of Ravenstone and watched the carriage disappear into the dark. She was alone now. Her husband turned to her. "You must be tired from the journey," he said politely. "I shall attend to a few matters and join you shortly." Her chambers were large and cold, overlooking cliffs and the restless sea. When the maid left her dressed in white night linen, Clarissa stood in the center of the room waiting. She did not wait long. The connecting door opened. The Duke entered without ceremony, his jacket removed, his collar open. He smelled faintly of tobacco and brandy. He stopped a few feet from her. "Shall we proceed with this business, Venetia?" he said. The false name cut deep. He stepped closer. His hands rose to her face, lifting it toward the light. His eyes sharpened. His grip tightened. "You," he said slowly, "are not Venetia Hargrave." The room fell silent. Clarissa's heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. "No," she whispered. "I am not." For a long moment he stared at her, fury building in his gaze. "Explain," he ordered. And so she did. She told him everything. Venetia's flight, the debts, the threats, the pressure. She held nothing back. When she finished, he released her abruptly and turned away, swearing under his breath. "This is fraud," he said coldly. "Criminal fraud." "I know," she whispered. "I am sorry." He paced the room. "The marriage has not yet been consummated," he said at last. "It could be annulled. Your family exposed. Your father imprisoned." Clarissa said nothing. "But," he continued, "scandal would follow. My name dragged through society." He turned to face her fully. "I require an heir," he said plainly. That was the purpose of this marriage. Clarissa understood. "We remain married for now," he continued. "We attempt to produce a child. If you conceive within a year, the marriage stands. If not, we part ways quietly. Your family remains silent. Or I will see your father in prison." It was blackmail, but it was mercy too. "Very well," Clarissa whispered. "I accept." His eyes studied her. "Then we shall complete this marriage," he said. What followed was not cruel, but it was without tenderness. When it was over, he left without another word. Clarissa lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She had saved her family, but she had trapped herself, and the man she had deceived knew exactly who she truly was. The first weeks of their marriage moved in cold silence. Ravenstone Hall was vast and quiet, and its long corridors echoing with footsteps and distant wind from the sea cliffs. Clarissa learned quickly that the Duke rose early, worked long hours in his study, and spoke little unless necessary. He treated her with careful politeness, as one might treat a guest who had overstayed. They dined together each evening at the long mahogany table. Silver clinked softly against porcelain. Candles flickered between them like a thin wall of light. He asked about her health. She answered properly. Nothing more. At night, he came to her chambers without warning. There was no anger now, only duty. He performed his role with calm efficiency, never cruel, never gentle. When it was done, he returned through the connecting door. Clarissa endured it quietly. She reminded herself why she had agreed. She would not cry. She would not beg for warmth. During the day, she wandered the house like a careful ghost. The servants observed her with curiosity at first, then cautious respect. Mrs. Blackwood, the stern housekeeper, remained distant but obedient. The library became Clarissa's refuge. Shelf after shelf of books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. History, languages, philosophy, poetry. She could lose herself there for hours. One afternoon, the Duke entered quietly and found her seated at a desk, sorting estate ledgers. He stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing?" he asked. Clarissa looked up quickly, color rising in her cheeks. "I found the accounts disordered. I thought I might assist. I helped my father manage ours at home." He stepped closer and examined the pages. Her handwriting was neat. The figures were exact. "You have a talent for numbers," he said. "Numbers are honest," she replied softly. "They do not pretend to be something they are not." His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than usual. Then he gathered the ledgers. "Very well. Continue if you wish." It was the first time he had allowed her to be useful. Gradually, small changes began to form between them. He discovered she could read Italian and French fluently. He overheard her reciting poetry from memory. He noticed the way servants relaxed around her because she treated them kindly. One evening in the library, as rain beat against the windows, he paused beside her chair. "Tell me about yourself, Clarissa," he said. It was the first time he had spoken her real name without anger. She set aside her book slowly. "There is little to tell. I was always the quiet one. Venetia loved attention. I preferred books. You were well educated. My father insisted upon it. Languages, mathematics, history." He studied her thoughtfully. "You are not what I expected." "Oh," she agreed. "I am not." Silence stretched between them, but it felt less sharp than before. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke again. "I loved my first wife." Clarissa's breath caught. Her name was Sophie. She died giving birth to our son. They both died. I thought I would never recover. His voice did not break, but pain shadowed his eyes. "I swore never to risk loving again. When I agreed to marry your sister, it was for duty, nothing more." "Instead, you were given me," Clarissa said gently. "Yes." There was no fury in his voice now, only exhaustion. "I do not blame you entirely," he added after a moment. "But the deception was a wound, I know." She did not defend herself. There was nothing to defend. The distance between them shifted that night. It did not disappear, but it softened. Weeks passed. Then one morning, Clarissa felt a strange wave of sickness before breakfast. It came again the next day, and the next. She told no one at first, but when her monthly courses failed to arrive twice, she could no longer deny it. She was with child. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the Duke's study door. "Enter." He looked up from his desk. "Is something wrong?" She stepped inside and closed the door carefully. "I have news," she said. "I believe I am carrying your child." For a long moment he did not move. Then he stood slowly. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a physician." He stared at her as if seeing her anew. "Then our bargain stands," he said quietly. "You will remain Duchess of Bellingham." "Yes." He moved closer. For an instant she thought he might touch her. Instead, he clasped his hands behind his back. "You will take care of yourself. I will summon the best physician." "The child is what matters," she said before she could stop herself. His jaw tightened. "Yes, the child is everything." She bowed her head and left. That night she lay awake with one hand resting over her stomach. "You are wanted," she whispered softly into the dark. "Even if I am not, you are." The pregnancy progressed steadily. The physician confirmed it. Mrs. Blackwood grew more respectful. The Duke became attentive in practical ways. He ensured her meals were nourishing. He shortened her walks when she tired. He sent for books on child-rearing. But still, he remained guarded. Until the letter arrived. Clarissa was in the hall when the courier delivered it. She saw the Duke's expression change as he read. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He looked at her slowly. "Your sister has returned to London." Clarissa felt the world tilt. "She appeared at a ball last evening," he continued, "on the arm of her husband. She claims she was wronged, that she was meant to be Duchess of Bellingham." "No," Clarissa whispered. "She says she was coerced into eloping, that when she returned to claim her rightful place, then she discovered her younger sister had stolen it." "That is a lie. The letter mentions she has consulted solicitors." Fear gripped Clarissa's chest. "Can she challenge the marriage?" "Possibly." The contract bore Venetia's name. "You signed the register as Venetia." Clarissa sank into a chair, her hand pressing protectively over her stomach. The Duke paced the floor. "We must prepare for scandal," he said grimly. And scandal came. Letters flooded in from London. Gossip spread through drawing rooms and newspapers. Some called Clarissa a schemer. Others called her a victim. Then, one cold December afternoon, Venetia herself arrived at Ravenstone Hall. Clarissa stood in the drawing room when her sister entered. Venetia looked unchanged. Golden hair, bright green eyes, beautiful as ever. But her smile held something sharp. "Dear sister," she said sweetly, "how well you look. Pregnancy suits you." The Duke stepped forward. "You have no claim here, madam." Venetia laughed lightly. "I have every claim. The marriage contract named me. The promises were made to me. The marriage has been consummated," the Duke said flatly. "My wife carries my heir." Venetia's gaze dropped to Clarissa's stomach. "That may not matter," she replied. "A marriage obtained through fraud can be annulled, and if that were to happen, the child would be illegitimate." Clarissa felt her breath leave her body. "What do you want?" she managed. Venetia smiled. "Compensation. £20,000, in exchange for silence and renouncing my claim." The Duke's face hardened to stone. "You are blackmailing us. I prefer to call it negotiation." Silence stretched. Then the Duke spoke with icy calm. "You will have your settlement, in exchange for signed renunciation and permanent silence." Venetia inclined her head. "As you wish." When she left, Clarissa remained frozen. "She would have destroyed my child for money," she whispered. "Yes," the Duke said quietly. "She would have." Clarissa's strength broke. Tears poured down her face. For the first time since their wedding night, the Duke hesitated only a second before stepping forward. He placed his arm around her shoulders. It was stiff at first, uncertain. But when she leaned into him, sobbing against his chest, His hold tightened. "I will not allow anyone to threaten my child," he said firmly. "Not even your sister." Something changed in that embrace. Not duty, not bargain. Something warmer. Something real. And for the first time since that terrible wedding day, Clarissa did not feel entirely alone. The settlement was concluded within 2 weeks. Venetia signed the papers renouncing every claim. The money was transferred quietly. She and her captain left England soon after, chasing a life funded by betrayal. The scandal did not disappear at once, but it softened. Society found new gossip, new rumors, new victims. At Ravenstone Hall, winter settled heavily over the cliffs. Inside, something warmer slowly began to grow. The Duke no longer treated Clarissa as a necessary inconvenience. He began joining her in the library without pretense. They spoke not only of estate matters, but of books, of politics, of the strange cruelty of society. He listened when she spoke. He truly listened. One evening, as snow drifted beyond the tall windows, Clarissa sat beside the fire, her hands resting over her growing belly. The baby moved often now, strong and steady. The Duke watched her quietly. "Does it pain you?" he asked when she shifted slightly. "No, only restless." She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Would you like to feel?" He stepped closer without hesitation this time. His large palm settled over her stomach. The baby kicked firmly against him. He froze. His eyes widened in wonder. "That is my child," he whispered. "Yes." Another kick pressed against his hand. A slow change came over his face. The guarded hardness melted. Something almost boyish flickered in his expression. "I thought I would never have this again," he said quietly. Clarissa looked up at him. "You will be a wonderful father." His gaze lifted to hers. "And you will be a remarkable mother." There was no distance in his voice now. From that night forward, he lingered beside her more often. He read aloud when she grew tired. He walked with her through the halls when sleep would not come. Spring arrived with pale sunlight and sharp sea winds. Clarissa's labor began in the middle of a violent storm. Thunder shook the windows. Rain lashed the cliffs. The pain was long and fierce. Hours passed in waves of exhaustion and effort. She gripped the sheets and thought she might break. But the Duke paced outside her chamber like a caged animal. Servants avoided his path. When at last the child's cry pierced the storm, he nearly ran through the door. "A son," the physician announced. Clarissa lay pale but smiling, a tiny red-faced infant in her arms. The Duke stepped forward slowly, as if approaching something sacred. She placed the child carefully into his arms. He held the baby awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. He stared down at his son. A tear slipped down his cheek. "He is here," he whispered. "He is truly here." Clarissa watched him. This was not the cold man who had confronted her on their wedding night. This was a father, vulnerable and overwhelmed. "What shall we name him?" he asked. "Alexander," she said softly. "After your father." His eyes flickered with surprise. "You remembered. You spoke of him once." He nodded slowly. "Alexander Crow." He bent his head and pressed a kiss to the baby's tiny brow. That night, he did not leave her side. In the weeks that followed, Ravenstone Hall felt different. Laughter echoed through corridors that had known only silence. The nursery became the heart of the house. The Duke proved patient and devoted. He held Alexander for hours, walking the floor when the child cried. He watched Clarissa with quiet admiration as she soothed and fed their son. The space between husband and wife shrank with every shared glance. One summer evening, when Alexander slept peacefully in his cradle, the Duke found Clarissa in the conservatory among blooming roses. "I have been thinking," he said. "That sounds serious." "It is." He moved closer. "I have treated you unfairly. Not in anger alone, but in withholding myself from you. I convinced myself that distance would protect me from loss." Clarissa's heart quickened. "And has it?" "No." He took her hands. "Somewhere between winter storms and nursery nights, you became more than obligation. You became essential." She held her breath. "Clarissa, I am falling in love with you." The words seemed to surprise even him. Her eyes filled with tears. "I have loved you quietly for months," she whispered, "even when you could not see me." His fingers tightened around hers. "Then we have both been foolish." He drew her into his arms and kissed her with warmth and certainty. There was no duty in it, no bargain, only choice. When they parted, breathless, he smiled fully for the first time since she had known him. "I want to marry you again," he said. "We are already married." "Not properly. Not as Clarissa. No veil, no lies. I want to stand before witnesses and choose you openly." She laughed softly through tears. "Then let us begin again." A small ceremony was held in the chapel weeks later. Only trusted servants attended. Alexander slept in the arms of his nurse. This time, Clarissa wore no veil. When asked her name, she spoke clearly. "Clarissa Hargrave Crowe." The Duke's eyes never left her face. "I choose you," he said. During the vows he had written himself, "Not from duty, not from necessity, but because my heart belongs with yours." Tears slid down her cheeks. "And I choose you," she replied. "Not because I was forced, but because I love you." When he kissed her, the chapel felt warmer than any summer day. Years later, people would remember their marriage as one that had survived scandal and whispers. But those who lived within Ravenstone knew the truth. It had survived because two wounded hearts had learned to forgive, because duty had softened into devotion, because a child born from necessity had become the bridge between strangers. On quiet evenings, Clarissa would stand at the cliff's edge, watching the sea, Alexander playing safely behind her. The Duke would join her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Do you regret it?" he asked once. "That terrible beginning?" She shook her head. "No, because without it, I would never have found you." He kissed her temple gently. The wind carried the sound of their son's laughter across the grass. The marriage that had begun with deception had grown into something stronger than either of them had imagined. Not perfect, not simple, but real. And for the first time in her life, Clarissa felt entirely herself.